If you're curious to hear a little music from our guest Carla Lucero, who we spoke to in our most recent episode, check out E4TT's annual concert of music by women and non-binary composers, Midnight Serenades, on January 25th. Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our conversation with Vivian Fung, who we spoke to in March 2022. Each of your pieces has a strong, distinct voice and energy. Could you talk about your compositional process?
I think process is a really good word. I really love talking about process when I talk about composition because the end result is almost like a byproduct. When I teach, I really like to talk about the process and how things tend to work. I think that once I get into the process of composing, it almost takes over for me. I can't really describe, the technical details, but I can describe the feeling I get. If I go into that flow of working and composing, and actually deadlines are really helpful to me. Knowing that there is an end game, my adrenaline kicks in, and I kind of go into the zone of making, and doing. And it almost becomes like a spiritual process to me because there is a higher power for me that takes over, so to speak. I mean, not really, but, I feel like there is something guiding me. And that guidance is in the form of intuition maybe, or years of doing this, what have you, but it takes over. That sort of intuition takes over, and it almost guides me to choose my notes and to choose what I need to do. That being said, of course, years of craft and years of, doing this has certainly helped. And I also think of architecture as a very important role into crafting the whole piece so that it has to have an inherent flow and inherent logic to it. But process for me is really important. And that idea of this, I don't know, this letting that force take over.
When you're staring at blank score paper, how do you generate your initial ideas?
Blank pages are the toughest because it's like an abyss. You stare into it and you feel so unproductive because you're staring at the blank page. But, I have come to the conclusion that the first draft will be always terrible, and I've always, accepted, I've come to accept that, whatever you do will be, the first draft will always be a work in progress. And so I give myself permission to just start, and with the acceptance that you will always have to change and tweak and mold it to your liking. And so the start is always, it's become almost like a ritual because it's like the idea of starting is so difficult, staring at a blank page. That's probably the most difficult. The end, coming to the end where, things are becoming, finishing and things are becoming concrete and everything is just working itself out. That's easy, but the beginning is so difficult.
What was your path to becoming a composer? Did you know that's what you wanted to do from early on?
So, not to sound prodigious or anything, because I don't think I was, but so I started. I had a tiger mom, and on piano when I was like 4 or 5, and being the obedient child that I was, I started with that. But then composition came because I didn't want to practice. And I actually think that a lot of composers have the same story. So I was like maybe 7 or 8, and my mom was saying, "Go practice," and I didn't want to practice. So I would start improvising on the piano so that she would know that I was practicing, even though I wasn't. And I was fortunate that my first piano teacher was a composer, and I still am really good friends with her. In fact, she came to Cambodia with us, with our son. She recognized that, and she, instead of reprimanding me, saying, you shouldn't do that or whatever, she actually taught me how to notate. And she said, "Oh, wouldn't it be fun to, write some of these things down instead of just having it be improvisations?" And so that's when my imagination really became, I found an outlet. And so my first, composition where I notated it was a group of piano pieces called insect songs. And it's not just insect songs, it's insect songs, And, of course, the music was very simple with, Alberti basses and all those things. But the stories were really elaborate. And so I think my creative outlet became, I grew up in Edmonton where there's nothing to do during the wintertime. And when it came time to, college and things, it was just, it chose me almost,
I think we hear the siren call and we follow it.
Right.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure, and a special thank you to our guest, Vivian Fung, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to audio engineer extraordinaire Stephanie Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts and tune in next week for Good Measure.